Hi, I want to welcome you to another tutorial of the Stream Developer SwiftUI series. In this episode, you will learn to build two animations. The first is the Twitter-like reaction animation. Secondly, you will learn to build the cumulative clap reaction of the Medium's iOS app. We will build these two animations with the help of Motionscape. If you don't know what it is about, that is absolutely fine. It is an animation playground for developers. In this video, we will use it to generate appropriate and correct easings for the animations we want to build. It is free to download from the Mac App Store. This tutorial will guide you to learn about SwiftUI animation techniques, and the skills you gain from it will help you to build macro interactions for your next apps. My name is Amos, and I am so excited to guide you in building these two animations. So let's begin. Let's go through the completed projects. The first one is the Twitter-like animation. You can see it has the gray heart icon and the number of likes. By tapping on the icon, we display the reaction animation. The next one is the cumulative clap reaction of the Medium app. By tapping on the hand icon, we also display the animation as well. To follow along with this video, you can get both projects on GitHub in the repository SwiftUI tutorial projects. It contains both the Twitter-like reaction animation and the cumulative clap reaction of the Medium iOS app. To be able to create a Twitter-like reaction animation successfully with SwiftUI, we need to understand what is actually involved. I have already taken a screen recording of this animation, so let's deconstruct it and learn the details so that we will be able to create it successfully. So this is the screen recording I took for the Twitter-like reaction animation. To preview the animation, I'm going to drag the slider. There is a small circle that scales up, and its inner stroke begins to remove. After, the animation shows the heart icon, which scales up as well, and then the splashes. So the SwiftUI animation we are going to create will involve scaling up and removing the inner stroke of the small circle. We will use scale animation to scale the heart icon, and then use opacity to display the splash animation. The number of likes won't contain any animation. So let's begin. When we go to the project navigator, you can see we have these two folders, Twitter-like and Medium clap. So let's begin with the Twitter-like. That also contains two files. The first one is the Twitter splash view. So here I have already drawn a circle and repeated copies of the circle using for each. By using the parent container ZStack, I added another copy, and this copy is rotated at an angle of 45. So when the heart icon is tapped, we will display this splash view inside the Twitter content view. So in this file, I have already brought the splash view, as you can see it over here. So the first heart icon is the one with outline, and this filled one is the one you see on the screen. We will use animation states to hide and show each of the views at different point in time. Next, you can see we have the splash view from this file. To animate the views, we need states. So over here, I have already defined all these states. The first one is show heart. When the stroked heart icon is tapped, we will use this state to show the blue heart icon. We will use the next state to show the splash, and then by using the third one, we will remove the splash. The icon also changes color when it is tapped, so that uses the variable like the color. And the last one is remove inner stroke. After displaying the circle, we will use this state variable to remove the inner stroke of the circle. After defining the initial animation state, what we have to do next is to define how we want this animation to be triggered. We want to trigger this animation with tap. In SwiftUI, we can use the on-tap gesture. So we look for the parent container holding all the views. We want to add the interactivity to all the views. So you can see we have this ZStack I have already added the accessibility trait modifier to this Z-stack. The aim here is to tell the iOS voiceover that this Z-stack parent container is a button. Below the accessibility modifier, let's add the on-tap gesture modifier. In the body of the on-tap gesture, we will set all the final animation states using the initial animation states we have defined over here. So some of these states will be animated and others will not. In that case, we need to use explicit animation to animate the views we want to animate. In SwiftUI, we can create two types of animations, implicit and explicit. Implicit animation is whereby we attach the animation modifier directly to the view. When we use implicit animation, all the properties that will be changed using a state variable will also animate. This is not what we want. So to avoid this, we can use explicit animation using with animation. By using that, we can put only the properties we want to animate inside with animation. And those that we don't want to animate, we can put that outside with animation. So let's copy all the states here and bring them inside the on-tap gesture and specify those that we want to animate and those that will not receive any animation. The other state variable we want to bring is liked. When the icon is tapped, we will use this state variable to increase the number of likes. So with this state variable, we will not animate it. The other state variable that won't be animated is the liked color. So let's copy that and paste it here. We will change the color to the color we have already defined here, which is called stream blue. So let's set the final state to stream blue instead of the gray color. For the remaining state variables, we want to animate each one of them. Let's begin with show heart. So we will animate it explicitly by using with animation. We can remove this variable and paste it here. After we add with animation, what we have to do next is to specify the easing. For the heart animation, we are going to use an interpolating spring. In order to get the values for the interpolating spring, we are going to use the tool Motionscape. Using Motionscape, we can prototype different types of easings for the animation we built with SwiftUI. In the left navigator, you can see we have different types of easings, as well as spring animations. On the bottom right, we can also change the animation type and use different animations. Let's change it back to circles. For the heart animation, we are going to use an interpolating spring. So let's select interpolating spring over here. And that gives us options to change the parameters of the spring. These are the default values. I have already tested with different values. So here, what we are going to do is to change the damping from 15 to 10 by clicking on this icon. We also want to give the animation a delay of 0.1 second. So by going to the options tab, you can see we have delay. Here we can set the delay. I'll click on this icon and change it to 0.1. Once you get what you are looking for, we can go to the bottom right and click on this button, copy animation code, or go to the code section and click on this icon to copy the animation interpolation. You can see we have the interpolating spring. So let's copy that and go back to the SwiftUI project. Let's paste the interpolating spring modifier we just copied from Motionscape inside the parentheses of with animation. As you can see, the final state of this animation is the same as the initial state. As the initial state is set to false, we will change the final state to true. When the icon is tapped, we will show the splash animation and then make it disappear. So here we have placed show Twitter splash inside with animation using isOut, and its final state is set to true. After showing the splash, we need to also remove it. So let's copy the with animation block and paste it here. Then we cut remove Twitter splash and paste it inside it. Since this animation removes the object from the screen, the best ease-in equation here will be ease-in. So I will change this to ease-in. This animation and that will happen at the same time, but we want this to happen later in time, so we can add delay. Let's set the delay to 0.5. The final state is also the same as the initial state, so let's change it to true. Let's move on to the next. Remove inner stroke. We can copy this with animation block again and paste it here, and then we remove this and place it inside it. Once the circle scales up, we will use this state variable to remove the inner stroke. So over here, we have the initial state set to false. Then here we have to set it to true. And since it disappears from the screen, the best ease-in is also ease-in. But we have to change the delay from 0.5 to 0.2. I have already tested this with MotionScape. Now we have all the final states of the animation set. What we have to do next is to use all the states to animate the properties we want to animate. So let's go up here and begin with the circle. When the icon is tapped, we want to remove the inner stroke. To do that, we add the inner stroke modifier to the circle. In SwiftUI, a stroke border represents the inner stroke, and that should be the first modifier for the circle. Let's remove the style and add the line width parameter. Let's put, for example, 2, and that converts the circle to an outline. We want to animate the line width using the state variable remove inner stroke. So instead of setting it to a fixed value, I'm going to paste it here. And we are going to use ternary conditional operation. So I'll bring a question mark. This has two values, true and false. So when the condition is true, we will set the line width of the circle to 0. And when it is false, we will set it to 35. Since we have the false value set to a large number, you can see it is shown as a circle. By swapping the values, now we have it shown as an outline. I'm going to undo the change. Let's animate the scale property of the stroke also. After the frame modifier, we can add the scale effect modifier and use the same state variable. For the true value, we will set it to 1.3, and the false value, we will set it to 0. So once we tap the heart icon, we change the line width of the circle from 0 to 35, and then we scale it from 1.3 to 0, and that will remove the circle. Next, when the icon is tapped, we also change the color. This can be done using the hue rotation modifier, and using the same state variable remove inner stroke, we want to animate the angle of the hue rotation modifier. So let's add the hue rotation modifier over here. The angle of the hue rotation modifier can be in degrees or in radians. So you can see here, we have set it in degrees, and using the state variable remove inner stroke, we set the true value to 270 and the false value to 0. Let's move on to the filled heart icon, which is this one. We are going to use scale effect to scale it from 0 to 1. So after the foreground color modifier, let's add the scale effect modifier and use its state variable showHeart. Let's animate it with ternary conditional operation. So I will bring question mark. For the true value, we set it to 1, and the false value will be 0. You have now noticed the blue heart icon is hidden, and that reveals the outline heart icon. Let's tap on the icon to see what we have. So we have animation of the heart as well as the circle. What is left is the splash. For the splash, we will use two animations, scale and opacity. Let's begin with scale. We can copy the state variable of the splash and use it to animate the scale effect. So let's copy it over here and paste it here. That will also be animated using ternary operation. So I will bring a question mark. For the true value, we will set it to 1, and the false value will be 0. So now, if we tap the icon, we show the splash, but we need to get it disappear as well. To get the splash disappear, we can add another property, that is opacity, and animate it in an opposite way to the scale effect. So let's copy this one and change it to opacity and swap the values. So I will remove the scale effect and put opacity. Then I will swap the true and false values. So we have 0 and 1. So by tapping on the icon, we show and remove the splash as well. So we have successfully built the Twitter-like reaction animation. Next, let's move on to build the cumulative clap reaction of the Medium iOS app. The Medium clap reaction also has two files. The first one is Medium content view and also Medium splash view. The splash view is the same as what we had in the Twitter-like animation. So we have a repeated circle with gradient applied to it. Then we place it in a Z-stack. Inside the Z-stack, we also have the triangles. This is a repeated triangle with gradient. In the file Medium content view, we show the splash and the other views together. You have noticed I have already added these state variables as the initial animation states. So for this animation, we will add the interactivity to the hand icon, which is this view over here. I have already added the accessibility add traits modifier to this icon to tell the iOS voiceover that this is actually a button. Below this modifier, let's add how we want this animation to be triggered. We will trigger the animation using a tap gesture. So let's add the on-tap gesture modifier. In the closure of the on-tap gesture modifier, we will add all the final animation states and also the properties we don't want to animate. When the hand icon is tapped anytime, we will show the number immediately without animating it. This shows using the clap. So let's put it here and increase it by 1 anytime the icon is tapped. By tapping on this, you can see the number increases by 1. That is the easiest part. Next, we animate all the views explicitly using with animation. I have already tested all the easings for this animation using Motionscape. So I have chosen different kinds of easings for the animation. So the first animation involves moving the splash, the circle and the number up anytime the hand icon is tapped. So inside the on-tap gesture, we will add with animation. I obtained the easing from Motionscape as we did for the spring animation. So when we tap the hand icon, we will show this animation at a duration of 0.5 seconds. When this animation is shown, we need to use another animation to remove it as well. So below the first with animation, we will add another one. The second with animation will be used to dismiss the views. As you see here, we set the duration and the repeat count without using any delay. So this animation will be shown first. So we show the views immediately by setting moving to true. And after 6 seconds, we set the state to false. We can also do the same thing for the splash as well. So below this one, let's add another with animation. As we did for the number and the circle, we need to dismiss it as well. So we add another animation to remove the splash over a certain period of time. Again, I got all the easing values from MotionScape as we did for the spring animation. So let's look at the difference. When the hand icon is tapped, we show this animation for the splash. And after 0.6 seconds, we use this animation to remove it. We have set all the final animation states. What we have to do is to use these states to animate the properties. We will create two animations for the splash. We use scale effect to scale it from 0 to 1, and then as it scales, it also rotates. So we have to use rotation effect to create a rotational animation. Let's do the scale effect first. By using the state show medium splash, we will animate the scale of the view from 0 to 1. So for the true value, we will set the scale to 1, and when the condition is false, we will set it to 0. So you have noticed we have now removed the splash. By tapping the hand icon, we show the splash. Let's add the rotation animation so that it rotates at the same time. We will set the angle of rotation in degrees. Then we use the same state variable to animate the angle of rotation. Let's animate it with the same ternary operation as we did for the scale. So for the true value, we will set the angle to 30. The false value will have an angle of -15. By tapping the icon, the splash scales and rotates at the same time. The last animation we want to create is movement. Anytime we tap, we want to move the circle, the splash, and the number up. And this can be done using the Y offset of the parent container holding all the views. This C stack contains all the views, so we can add the offset modifier here to animate the Y coordinate. We are only interested in the Y coordinate, so let's put it here and use the state variable moving. We will animate it using the same ternary operation. So for the true value, we will set the Y offset to 0. Now, in the beginning of the animation, we don't want the circle to be shown. So what we can do here is to use opacity to hide it. Above the offset modifier, let's add the opacity modifier. Then we use the same state variable to animate it. For the true value, we will set the opacity to 1. Let's set the false value to 0. The circle disappears, and now anytime we tap, we show all the views. And with this, we will end here. So to recap, in this video, we built the Twitter-like reaction animation using SwiftUI. We didn't end there. We moved on to create the cumulative clap reaction of the Medium iOS app. For more SwiftUI animation techniques, tips and tricks, I encourage you to subscribe to the SwiftUI section of the Stream Developers YouTube channel. Thanks for watching.